A very warm good afternoon from us here at Markets Today. It is the tail end of the week. It's Friday, and it is the most exciting day for us here at Markets Today. You know why? Because today's show is solely dedicated to you, our beloved audience. It's a show where we want to hear your voices, we want to interact, and it's a show where I'm actually allowed to have my phone on set because I want to hear your voices. I want to answer your questions. What's the SMS line? 20146. That's how you can reach out to us. Ask us about anything when it comes to investments in Kenya, and we are ready, we are waiting to give you the appropriate response to whatever question that you might have on investments. If that doesn't work for you, we're also available on social media. That's at Metropole TV on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or at Mbithe Mwema on the same platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or even LinkedIn. Give us a shout. What would you like to know? But apart from that, we have a lot of things lined up for you today. We'll start by looking at what was happening on the NSE yesterday. This week, guys, it's all been about Safaricom. It's been trading double-digit numbers. I mean, yesterday's turnover was already up 38%, and it crossed the 1 billion mark. I will be giving you a bit more detail on what was happening on the NSE. I'll also give you an overview of what is happening in the Treasury bills market. Every single week on Thursday, we get the auction results. I will be giving you a sense of what was happening this week. It does seem that liquidity is drying up in the domestic market. So what next as we get into the tail end of the year? We take a break, and as always, every Friday, we take it to the street and find out what are the questions that are perturbing the individuals out there, especially when it comes to investments. So we have a couple of videos lined up for you where we're able to engage and give you a one-on-one experience. And we even have a couple of questions that have come in through our SMS line or through our social media platform. If you want to be part and parcel of today's show, I would encourage you 20146. Hiyo ndio nambari yetu, tupigie simu, tutumie SMS ndio tuweze kuwasiliana. Kama hiyo haifanyi kazi, at Mbithe Mwema or at Metropole TV, that's the way we can be able to engage. Before I get into the stats, last week I know we were talking about KCB, and I saw a lot of you responding to us. The keyword for last week was market capitalization, which is the total number of shares multiplied by the price to get the value of that particular share. So I have not forgotten you guys, Jawasahau. I saw a lot of responses on Twitter. We also saw responses on Facebook. We are trying to work out something special just to be able to give you as a way of saying thank you for engaging with us and keeping tabs on what we are learning. Now, let's get into what is happening on the NSE, and then keep it up. I will be able to give you the word for today. We can answer that and continue to engage. So let's take a look at what was happening yesterday on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So as expected, the indices were all up. They were all up in the green, largely because of Safaricom, which has now touched a new high of 33 shillings per share. The last time that we saw this price range was prior to COVID, BC if you like, before COVID. That's the last time it touched a high of 33, and yesterday it touched that high, and we expect a bit of profit taking. In other words, some of the investors could possibly be taking profit and selling off at the 33 mark. But as a consequence of this new high for Safaricom, we did see all the indices close in the green. NSE all share up 54 basis points to close the day at 146.76. NSE 20 share up 17.48 percentage points to close the day at 1,778.46, whereas the NSE 25 share was up 16.35 to close the day at 3,298.69. Let's see what was the trajectory when it comes to the turnover for the NSE. So by virtue of turnover, we are describing all the trades that happened, what stock traded, the volume that it traded, multiplied by the price, and then taking the total for all the shares that were traded to get the total turnover for the NSE yesterday. As you can see there in my chart, the turnover was up to 1 billion, over 1 billion shillings, slightly above a billion for the day. Now, the NSE hardly touches a billion, but over the last 2 weeks, we have been seeing it hitting a near 1 billion. Earlier in the week, it touched 1.7 billion, largely on hefty trades on Safaricom. During this COVID period, we have been lucky to see volumes of 400 million, but November has been a spectacular month. We have seen foreign interest chasing up the price for Safaricom, which is now at 33 shillings per share. So yesterday, 1.08 billion was the turnover that was traded. That's up 38% compared to the previous day, which was 780 million. What is happening today? Typically, Fridays are a very slow day as well as Mondays, but this week has been nothing to do with the ordinary. On Monday, 1.7 billion traded. Just before I came to the show, already 17 million had traded in Safaricom, telling us that we could possibly be looking at another 1 billion, if not 700 million, in terms of the turnover for the day. What are the foreigners and what were the local investors doing? Well, yesterday, interestingly, it was almost a near split between the local investors and the foreign investors when it comes to the purchase and the sale of shares on the NSE. Safaricom dominated volumes, but at the 33 level, we are beginning to see some institutional local funds considering taking profit and selling out to be able to book the profit of 33 shillings per share. We will certainly see that continue to the month of December, because remember, at the every end of quarter, being December 31st, these institutions have to actually balance their books and record the performance for that quarter. So possibly it could stay up at 33 shillings, but highly likely investors will begin to sell out of the position to booking some actual profits from this particular rally. Now let's take a look at the individual stock performance yesterday on the NSE. Safaricom, 33 shillings, that's a new high that we are seeing. Last time we saw this was before COVID. That was the first quarter of the year. 22.93 million shares traded for a cumulative turnover of 756 million. Equity Group was also up there in terms of turnover. It traded 3.8 million shares for a price of 35.4 shillings for a cumulative consideration of 136.6 million shillings. KCB Group holding steady at a price of 37 shillings per share with 3.4 million shares traded for a total value of 125 million. Absa 9.7, a bit of price weakness there from the previous day. 1.2 million shares traded for a cumulative turnover of 12 million, whereas East African Breweries held steady at 155 shillings per share with 61,100 shares traded for a cumulative turnover of 9.5 million. So the blue chips were up there, but I think the mammoth trade was Safaricom, 756. The next biggest trade was 136. So I can only imagine it's been a good paid day or a payout season for the brokers that have been facilitating the Safaricom trades. Let's take a look at what was happening by virtue of volume. Certainly, Safaricom is up there, 22.9 million shares traded, Equity 3.8, KCB 3.4, Absa 1.2, and Kengen 597,000 shares traded. What was happening on price? Who are the price gainers for the day? Who are the price losers for the day? Let's take a look at our next data points, all provided to us courtesy of Harvest, that gives us an overview of financial markets in Kenya. Home Africa gained a bit of percentage yesterday. It was up 7.9 percentage points to close the day at 41 cents. Olympia also gained 7.62 percentage points to close at 2.4. Kengen is now at 4.85, has been losing ground but was able to recoup prior day losses to close at 4.84. I think the key thing we are looking out for, which is possibly next week, is the dividend that this company had actually issued for the last financial year. Scan Group gained 7 percentage points to close the day at 6.46. So if you have been buying it on a speculative basis, you probably have been looking at it at 5.9 shillings, and now you're sitting on almost 20% return in 1 week. And Umeme was also up there, gaining 6.7 percentage points to close the day at 7 shillings per share. Let's see who was on the reverse side of the trades yesterday in terms of the top losers for the day. Express Kenya down 10 percentage points to 2.7. Nairobi Business Ventures, which has been the top best trade for this particular week, gaining almost 700 percentage points in 1 day as it listed additional shares and it got new shareholders to buy into its business. It has been losing a bit of ground over the days subsequent to the almost 700 percentage hike, and it's now down 9.62 percentage points to 4.7. BOC Kenya, which will be acquired or has actually been shown the intent for acquisition by Kabasid, which wants to buy 100% of this stock, lost 6.27 percentage points to 63.5. The thing is, BOC is losing ground, but Cabacid has actually been steadily gaining ground in as much as it has been quiet a little bit this week. Eveready and Flametree were also up 5.45 and 5.34 percentage points respectively. So that's pretty much what was happening on the NSE. This particular week, what we have seen in Safaricom has just been massive. Today, just before I came, 17 million shares already traded. Yesterday, almost 23 million shares traded. Previous day, 13 million shares. Every single day, it's just been trading more than 10 million shares. These are massive volumes, all driven by foreign investors who have been doing the analysis and they actually like this stock. What do we think at the 33 price level? Well, our engagement with analysts and rather the investment community was the consensus was anything above 30 shillings was fully reflecting the price of Safaricom. The market, the way it operates, it's always looking for a discount. So at 32, 33, it does look like it represents the fair value of Safaricom, which in a way discounts the future value that this company would pretend for investors. So it does look like it's a bit of a stretch at 33, but clearly there are foreign investors who have probably valued it at a different level and they are beginning to see value in it. There is an additional consideration when you are looking at Safaricom today. The fact that the data coming out with regards to M-Pesa is that Safaricom is actually paying more in terms of paying its agents in the M-Pesa network because of the kind of business that they are doing. Yes, the 1,000 and below shilling transactions are zero rated, but the hope is come 31st of December that this zero rating will be lifted by the Central Bank of Kenya because it was supposed to be a temporal position to be able to help the Kenyans get through the COVID-19 season. So if this happens, and we have been seeing increments in terms of the M-Pesa and the money that's moving in M-Pesa, then it could mean that M-Pesa for the second half of the year reverses its 14% slide, which was recorded in the first half of the year, and this possibly becomes a positive. Could be something worth considering and maybe the rationale for this. But we also think that at 33 shillings and going to the tail end of the year, there could be some weakness, some profit taking, which means people who bought it at 28 or even the low that it got to 26 shillings in August are sitting on a pretty penny and would be willing sellers at the 33 shilling mark. We'll certainly continue to keep tabs on this particular stock and let you know what is happening as we get into the next week. Now, we take a break, but before we take a break, allow me to walk you through the data points that the Central Bank of Kenya came out with yesterday. Each and every single week, the Central Bank is in the market for the Treasury bill auction. It normally sources 24 billion for the normal budget operations of the government of Kenya. We tend to track how much is coming in, what is the investor interest in terms of the appetite, and we also track the interest rates that the people are willing to actually part with money in terms of the return that they get for placing money with the Central Bank of Kenya. This week, Central Bank was looking for 24 billion, but they only accepted bids worth 9.9 billion. The demand this particular week was only 10.9 billion. That's almost half of, less than half actually of what they were looking for. This, in a way, implies that there's actually liquidity is beginning to dry up a little bit, and the fact that they took in only 9.8 is also a precursor to that. The other interesting point that we did glean from this week's auction is the fact that the 1 year, which is a proxy for the short-term rates in Kenya, was slightly up compared to last week, and it's now at 8.2 percentage points, whereas last week, same time, it was at 8.0 percentage points. The expectation is that the interest rates on the short end of the paper will actually continue to rise, especially as we get into the essence of an election year or possibly the BBI referendum. So expect higher interest rates on the short end of the curve, and also looking at the NSE, I guess we're beginning to see what could happen as we come to the tail end of the year. That's pretty much what was happening in the financial markets. Nothing coming out from the corporate announcements. It's been a quiet season. And as we get to the tail end of the year, especially after the 12th of this month, nothing much happens on the NSE. So expect it to be quiet for maybe another month or even a month and a half. But if anything happens, you know this is a place to be if you want to understand what's happening. Now, we take a break. When we come back, we get to my most exciting part of today's show. That's the hashtag AskMbithe, where I say, please ask us anything that you would like to know when it comes to investments. Is it money markets? Is it SACCOs that you want to know about? Is it trading in shares? How do you trade in shares? How do you put your money with the government of Kenya? When is it the right time to put your money with the government of Kenya, or should you put it with money market funds? Anything that you want to know. We want to talk about interest rates, we want to talk about saving, we want to talk about investing. So we have taken it to the street, and we have a couple of questions that we want to answer and have a one-on-one, so to speak. But you know what makes me so excited is I have my phone with me. 20146, that's the SMS line. Guys, I literally light up when I see your messages. Say hi to me even though you don't have a question. 20146, hiyo ndio nangosi yangu. Mimi nataka salamu, nisalimie. I'm like, hi, ask Mbithe, jina yangu ni so and so. I'm reaching out from wherever you're at. Ask me anything when it comes to investments. Kwa sababu hii show ya leo ni show yako. So whether you are young, whether you are old, there's always something to do with money in your life, and we want to be the person to be able to help you make the right decision and to be the person that also listens to you and works with you in this journey. Tukutane after the break.